why AI changes everything and nothing about education.
AI is the thing that's allowing students to take all the shortcuts and have less and less agency.
One of the big mistakes that people make when they talk about education is thinking that
Bialik is an educator, researcher, and co-author of the upcoming book Irreplaceable, exploring the impact of AI on teaching and learning. She's also the founder of QuestionWell AI. And Peter Nilsson is a longtime educator, school leader, and co-author of the forthcoming book Irreplaceable alongside Bialik. He's the founder, editor at the Educator's Notebook, and co-founder of Athena Lab and senior consultant at Aptonym.
I think what's happening here right now is everyone is talking about learning loss and they're talking about job loss. And I think those are really things that we should be paying attention to. But the thing that's going to have the larger impact in the long run is the advent of social AI.
Teaching is an impossible job, literally. And so people are like, oh no, AI will take over many of the tasks of teaching. If AI takes over half the job, maybe the job will become remotely doable.
You can give me a positive and a negative that AI can have an impact in the education field.
The first reason why that might happen is...
One thing that I think we don't realize about that is...
All right, welcome back to the AI for Business Owners podcast. I'm your host, Jeff, and I have two guests with me this week. I want to let them introduce themselves. I'm looking forward to a pretty awesome conversation. Maya, you want to go first?
Sure. My name is Bialik. I am one of the two authors of our upcoming book with Peter. I'm also the founder of QuestionWell AI, which is an AI tool that my husband and I made for teachers when I was a teacher that started off by helping teachers write questions based on the context that they're in and has expanded since then. And I'm also doing a PhD doing research on AI in education.
Cool. Okay, cool. Peter?
Thanks, Jeff. Thanks, Maya. My name is Peter Nilsson. I'm an educator, co-author with Maya of the forthcoming book tentatively titled Irreplaceable: How AI Changes Everything and Nothing About Teaching and Learning. I was a teacher and school leader for many years, recently a head of school, now founder of the company Athena Lab, which seeks to establish a professional memory for the field of education. And I'm the editor of and curator of a weekly newsletter called the Educator's Notebook, which collects education and learning related news from around the web for the purpose of promoting innovation in education. But if you were to ask me what's most important in my life, I would say it's the musical that I'm writing right now. Maya and I are both artists in different forms, and the experience, well, we have many musical or artistic experiences that we've shared, or that we share, though not necessarily in the same place at the same time. So hands in many hats related to education, and really glad to be here with you, Jeff. Thanks.
Thanks. No, it's great to have you, and I think education is an amazing topic to try and dive into here. My first question is there AI in the musical?
I'm actually debating that right now about a scene in the second act. It's interesting. West Side Story commented very intentionally about emerging social science at the time. And the best art over history does that as well. And so I think I'd be remiss not to have some kind of reference to it. It will inevitably be part of our future, which is why we're here talking about it today. So it makes sense to find a way to engage it.
Well, and the question is whether you'll be able to make it timeless or whether it will make it sort of a time capsule of right now.
That's a really great question. That's a really great insight.
As a layperson, from an art perspective, I've always thought that the material should be a time capsule so that future generations can understand what it was like, what it looked like, or what it felt like, et cetera, as opposed to, I recognize, this book's timeless, I can always read it, and that's good, and I wouldn't say no to that, but I really would prefer to get, this is exactly what it was like in that room at that time, in that place, et cetera. And so I think there's a time and place for both, again, as a layperson. But
I think just to interrupt for a moment, I think that's important what you just said. It's at the very heart of our book, why AI changes everything and nothing about education. And I think the point that you've just made is essential to also great art. Great art is of its time and speaks to something timeless. In education, there are components of the work that we do that are timeless, and there are components that are very much of the technology that we have today. And finding that intersection point, that pivot point, that fulcrum, is, I think, the good work of professionals in our various capacities.
Yeah, and even the title, not just the subtitle, I think more deliberately asks this question of what is timeless and what will change. But even the title, Irreplaceable, is asking what about education is irreplaceable and what does change with the times and with the technology. So the whole book is actually kind of an exploration of that. And we have weirdly sort of doubled down on the parts that are not specific to AI. So AI changes all of these things. Which are the things that are fundamental? What's fundamental to teaching? What is fundamental to learning that AI might shift the surface level, but what is that deeper level that we want to try to bring out with the new tools that we have?
Oh, so much there I want to talk about. Here, let me start with this. Are you familiar with quite an old movie called The Dictator?
I've heard of it.
Of it, but not seen it. But
So
now I have to. Oh, wait a minute. With Charlie Chaplin.
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. But what's that
Yes.
movie really about? If you recall. You don't have to, but I'm just
you're
curious.
You're gonna have to teach us on this one.
It's an absolute brushing down of Hitler. It's literally a movie that is anti-fascism.
I was going to guess Hitler, but it would have
Absolutely.
been very awkward if I was wrong.
No, it's fine. The reason I bring that up, because germane to what you were talking about, there's an entire generation at minimum, probably more than one, who has no idea what that fascism environment looked like. And right now, that movie is looked at as farce.
Mm-hmm.
And the modern audience would look and say, "Oh, that didn't happen. That's just nonsense. That's like us talking about an aliens movie. It's just somebody made up a thing. It's utopia. It's whatever."
Dystopia.
No. Dystopia. Right. It doesn't matter. It's all of those, right? But my point is, no, it was very much a commentary on modern society at that moment. It is art, and it was trying to make a statement, and it was doing all the things it's supposed to do. Is it lost to history? I don't think so. I think the point of it existing and the fact that we're talking about it now means that it probably has the purpose it was supposed to have. To remind folks in this context, like, don't let that happen again. Although we should probably be playing that all over the place right now, but I'll shut up. Okay.
I was going to say, it's not so removed suddenly.
Indeed.
The really interesting insight there, though, is experience is the uniquely human ability to experience to make the same mistake again. It's to recognize a mistake when you made it again. There it is. Experience is the uniquely human trait to be able to recognize a mistake when you make it again. And this kind of gets, how do we understand the past? What is the role of history in our understanding of the present? If we don't know history, how does that affect the way we live in the present? And this could be very easily brought back to technology and today. And what are the mistakes that we've made with technology in the past? What are the successes that we've made in the past? How does that lead us to lose sight of or learn from those elements in the past? The one that we think about today with AI, when I'm talking with schools, is as educators, we missed the boat on social media. We said it isn't directly related to what we do. It's students' lives outside of school. And it took us 20 years to realize that actually the impact of social media on adolescents and on kids and on adults is so complicated. And now we're trying to recover from that and find ways to set the right guardrails. Similarly with mobile technology, we didn't understand how to use it, but we've learned now. Now the question is, can we take those lessons from social media and from mobile devices, and can we apply them to AI? And can we make the right decision to find the right positive use cases now with this new opportunity, this new technology? And can we avoid the mistakes that we made in the past with other technologies?
Oh, well, and I can extend it to education as well. I mean, originally education was mixed ages all in one group, and there was a lot of projects and hands-on work. I mean, there was work in the fields, there was apprenticeships, there was mini chalkboards. Everybody just had their mini chalkboard. And so many of these things are coming back to the point where I think it's ripe for some sort of parody of how the best examples of education, some would argue some of the best examples of education today resemble the original education things that we have gotten away from as we've tried to improve it. But part of it is also that people disagree, and different people in different contexts think that different types of education are most effective. But even just the mini chalkboards now, mini whiteboards was a huge movement. And it's actually, that's where we started. So it's all very cyclical and both timeless and constantly fads.
I'm reminded of the phrase, history doesn't repeat itself, but it certainly echoes.
Yes. Or rhymes?
Sometimes rhymes as well. Yeah, all of those I think they're all trying to say the same thing, which is, we're humans and our dynamic may shift from century to century, but in the end, people and people together tend to do the same basic things. Some people are, selfish. Some people are generous, and just that humanity is humanity. And I think that not every idea is a new idea. Sometimes it's a recycled idea. But it's okay to recognize your recycling. Like, hey, this was really good 100 years ago. I think it's good again. And you probably are right in some cases. I have a question. I'm curious your thoughts. And we can bring this to AI in a second here. But from the outside, I've often experienced what I would perceive as a disconnect between what the educational system thinks it's accomplishing and what the recipients of that education believe they're getting. And I'm curious what your comments are about. I don't. Maybe there isn't a disconnect there. Maybe it's my interpretation. But from a student perspective, there's a general theme of this is not worth my time. Why do I need this? Why is this valuable? And from the educator perspective, there's you need all these things. This is absolutely germane to everything in your life. I can recall an algebra teacher telling me that I will not succeed if I cannot make this algebraic equation work, and I can guarantee her I've never, ever, ever needed it. But that's not the point. But my point is, why do we think that disconnect is there if you have a comment about it?
So Maya and I first connected through an organization called the Center for Curriculum Redesign. So there are so many different ways we could go into this question. Maya, I just want to put on the table meta orientations and teaching philosophies as one way. Second way, different kinds of curriculum, the intended curriculum versus the taught curriculum versus the received curriculum, and even what we've talked about just recently in the last couple of days, the hidden curriculum. Jeff, maybe to start these things off, why do people, your question opened up several different boxes, several different avenues. One of those was...
Before you go any further, let me just, my follow-up is, and how can AI help?
Okay.
So that's where I'm headed.
I also have another addition. I have a couple other additions of directions that can go.
No, it's fine. Let's do it. But my goal is, let's talk about this. Let's frame this thing. And then if there's a dichotomy here, and then can AI help us solve some of that? And then I was going to let you guys start talking. So
the first way you introduced that was by asking the question, why is the experience of school different for students than what's intended from it? And then you later framed it as saying, well, this just doesn't feel relevant to my life. Let's start with the first one. Why is the experience different? In education context, we talk about the intended curriculum versus the delivered or the taught curriculum versus the received curriculum. And that means, the intended curriculum is made up of knowledge, skills, character traits, meta learning, elements of that teachers and curriculum leaders and schools explore. And then we design a curriculum that the teacher is intending to foster these attributes and skills and awarenesses within the students. But the lessons that we design might be delivered in a way that is different from what we intend. The teacher might actually behave in a way in the classroom that actually highlights some things and de-emphasizes other things, and what was intended may not be delivered. But the student's received curriculum, the third area, might actually be totally different from even what the teacher intended. They might interpret the lesson in a way that is different from the way the teacher even delivered it because of their own personal experiences, or it may simply be that the teacher thought they were teaching this knowledge, skills, and character traits, but in fact they were actually just doing rote experiences when they were asking students to recite things back to them, and the students, their received curriculum is just, I have learned how to parrot back to my teacher what they said to me. So the first reason why that might happen is because of those different kinds of experiences. But the second thing you said was the student might say, this just isn't relevant to me getting a job, for example. And that has to do with more, well, what do we think the purpose of education is to begin with? What is our teaching philosophy? What are students expecting to get out of this? And what are teachers or schools intending to give? Maya, I see you want to jump in on this. So why don't you go ahead?
Well, actually, before we jump into the teaching philosophies, which is kind of zooming out toward the broader goals of education and teaching. I just want to say one more thing from a cognitive science perspective about the intended versus taught versus received curriculum. There's also the aspect of transfer learning. So we kind of tend to think, and for a long time we thought it was Latin. Like if you learn Latin, you're actually learning to think logically and critically. And now it's math. If you learn math, this is what your algebra teacher was probably referring to. If you learn math, then you're able to, like the process of learning to isolate a variable helps you to think about isolating variables in the abstract. And the interesting thing, I'll say it this way, is that the brain is actually much more modular and sort of context dependent than we think, which is also an interesting connection to AI. AI is very context dependent and kind of changes what it
Extremely.
says based on what part of its context space you put it in.
Yeah.
But humans are this way as well. And so there's very easy ways to sort of show this in interesting psychology experiments of functional fixedness, things like that, where you can show that like a human has this knowledge but isn't transferring it to this very similar looking situation. And so part of it, I think, is a little bit of a misunderstanding, or at least like an underestimation of the challenge that is transfer learning and teaching for transfer. So we teach and we have these ideas, and even if it's not rote memorization, we're still sort of sending these messages of the point is compliance. The point is to come up with a product that does these things, check off a checklist, get a good score on the rubric. That also sends a message of what the point of school is. And so when you ask students, like, why do you think we write essays? Boy, can they not answer that in general. And essays is, to me, at least, maybe that's how my brain works. Essays to me is a lot closer to like transferable thinking skills than algebra. That might be a function of my brain. That's the last piece I wanted to add, is just individual differences. For some people it's Latin, for some people it's writing, for some people it's math. To me, improv unlocked like everything about my brain, and that was later in life. So there's the individual differences, and then there's just like the massive underestimation of the challenge of transfer learning before we get to teaching philosophies, which I'm
Right.
happy to hands it off.
Wait, as you bring up like essays, right? What I see, I spend a lot of time with local education stuff, delivering free AI classes to different audiences, et cetera. Just been trying to teach teachers how to use AI for the last year or so, because I think that it's super relevant. When the teacher understands it, they can then teach the students. Anyway, what I see is a lot of kids running to ChatGPT to write the essay, because like all students throughout history, I just want to go outside and play. So I just want to get the assignment done and move on, because that's a part of being a kid. But
Or I just want to get on my screen.
same today, yes, right. If the screens could actually be outside, boy, we might get something about. Anyway, I'm teasing. Obviously, that's not the right answer, but
No, and I will just say one other tiny thing on this is that like it would be great if they were just trying to go outside and play. And it's not only just like the screens as the alternative, but the arms race of education as a way of conferring a stamp of approval, a quality stamp. It's a giant competition. We're now globally competing for jobs. And so the pressure is much higher than even when I was in school. It's just higher and higher and higher. And so sometimes it's just the competition. And then therefore the requirements are growing so that some students can achieve them and some can fail to achieve them. In order for the quality approval function of education to work, some students need to succeed and some students need to fail. This is getting toward the teaching philosophies,
Yeah.
not exactly there, but like that's only one of the functions of education, but it is a powerful one that shapes, that is a force that shapes what's expected of students and therefore how their optimization and strategy works for achieving what is being asked of them. So it's for some students in some contexts, it's actually just so much is being asked of them, and there's no reason to take it in deeply. The messages being sent are achieve all of this, and you will have a successful life. Achieve it by any means possible, really.
Interesting. Your comment about context is the one that's probably stuck in my head at the moment. Hello, Kitty. Part of the podcast. Let's go. There's actually a recent phrasing called context engineering that is sort of making a buzz loop in the AI world, replacing prompt engineering, and the context being being that it's everything to an AI. Context is everything to all of us, to be really honest, if we sit and think about it for a little while. But the thing I want to ask at the moment is, would you currently define a either a mismatch or a problem in the educational system in the U.S. with respect to what it is focusing on versus what it should be focusing on?
So this gets back to the question of teaching philosophies. And in literature that goes back and uses the language of meta-orientations towards curriculum, which you can expand to the way that we think about the purpose of school, the way that we think about what our philosophy is about teaching and why we teach and why we have schools. One of the things that we write about in our book is there are 4 different philosophies that educators often have about their work, which is the lens through which they see the purpose of teaching and learning. And the first obvious one is that the purpose of education and teaching and learning is academic. We are teaching academic skills to our students. The second, though, might be humanistic, where we want our students to feel more fulfilled in their lives. The third reason for teaching might be a social justice orientation or a social orientation. We want to bring about a better society through education. And a fourth, which is the one that some people often put first also, is what we would call a pragmatic approach to education, which you might think of as transactional or economic or technical. It serves to prepare people for the workplace. It serves to provide a credentialing function or a training function or a certification function to show that they have moved their skills in a certain direction to prepare for a job or to prepare for some kind of setting. Now, most of us have a mix of those. We might feel one more than others, but we feel a little bit of all of them. But oftentimes people will gravitate towards one in particular. And we're in the middle of some informal research right now when we're talking with schools and talking with school leaders about polling our audiences to see how they feel about certain things and how that aligns with different positions and how that aligns with perspectives on AI. But you can see how if somebody is coming into education saying, I'm here to get a job, and somebody else is teaching a course to say, I want to make sure you have academic skills to succeed in school, then there's going to be a misalignment. Or if a teacher or a school is saying, we are here to prepare you for work, and somebody is saying, I am just not inspired and I need to feel fulfilled as a human, then there's going to be misalignment on the other side. And they're not going to be engaged in learning to prepare for work. So that fundamental alignment and or misalignment has a huge impact on the experience we all have in school, teachers, students, leaders, and more. And what we've really explored, what we started exploring in our work and what you can read about in the book is this idea that the way that we approach AI is also impacted by the different teaching philosophies that we have. So if you prioritize academic teaching and learning, then you'll say, great, AI is going to create more opportunities for students to have access to robust content and to pull more knowledge out of their AI systems and to explore new ideas. But you might be afraid that it's going to de-emphasize the role of human academic leaders. It's going to de-emphasize the role of the human as an intellectual authority in the academic settings. Similarly, if you have a social approach, you might have concerns about bias that exists within the AI and the damage that might cause when it's implemented at scale. But you might appreciate that everyone if it is freely available to everyone with a mobile device, and if over 90% of people have mobile devices, then you might appreciate that there is extraordinarily broad access to this very powerful technology. So different people are going to see different risks and opportunities in AI based on their teaching philosophy, based on the way that they perceive the purpose of schools. And that we have found already is really helpful simply in grounding the discourse, in providing a way for people to see each other. And instead of fighting over, it's like, no, it's all about the environmental risk of AI, or it's like, no, it's a huge opportunity for people to learn on their own. You can say, oh, here's the value we're prioritizing at this time in our conversation. And that enables us to have a more effective conversation. It enables us to move forward more easily by understanding what values we're prioritizing.
Yeah, and I just had like a little connection moment because none of us are just like nearly none of us are diehard proponents of just one of these teaching philosophies. We're all kind of have aspects of them in different amounts, and I would say in different contexts. And so sometimes you're in a context that activates one of these teaching philosophies in you, and suddenly you feel this is the most important thing. This is being neglected. I must protect this. And in another context, you might feel that way about another one of them. So we're not only talking past each other at any given time, we're so without this, we're so just like ungrounded. And so when you said like, is the education system doing this or doing that? The education system as a whole is not doing just one thing. It's doing at least 4 different things that are sometimes conflicting, sometimes they work together, sometimes they're just completely orthogonal, which can also result in conflict when people are saying the thing you're talking about isn't even the important thing. It's not even in the same chapter as the important thing, let alone on the same page. And so that's one way that we like to ground the conversation so that people can see themselves where they fit into the landscape, and that all of these are valid and sometimes kind of counteracting each other or pulling in different directions.
And if organizations and institutions are clear about what they're valuing at any given time, that can help signal to their different stakeholders more clearly what decision is being made when, and ultimately it can help parents and students understand the context that they are in.
I have a really interesting follow-up question for that, but I want to jump for a minute to a different sort of thought process, and then I want to come back.
And at some point, we'd love to come back to your initial question about, can AI help this disconnect?
Well, so you can maybe be able to do that right now. So I'm going to ask you each the same question, and it might be difficult, but we'll see if we can get something fun out of it. I want you to see if you can give me a positive and a negative that AI can have an impact in the education field. So give me something you think AI can really make a difference with, and something that you think AI can be detrimental about. Both of them for both of you.
There's so many.
Yeah.
Pick one. What's your most important one? Pick the most important and the most detrimental. Yeah, I know.
I'll get started. But yeah, it's a real struggle.
Sure, of course.
Maybe we could focus on like a pro and a con for students and a pro and a con for teachers.
Okay, fine. I'll take your amendment. If you choose not to decide, you still have made a choice. That's a lyric, by the way.
Yeah. Okay.
You have to be a rocker to get it.
I choose not to choose.
I'm gonna choose the one that is freshest in mind, Maya, that we've been talking about over the last week and a half, which maybe we can agree on together is well, students and teachers. The greatest, we've been talking a lot about agency. And that is something that, especially in today's world of emerging agentic artificial intelligence, understanding of what agency means in the context of schools and teaching and learning is really important. In the context of learning science, we talk about self-determination theory. Self-determination theory is what it sounds like. How much do people feel that they have self-determination in what they're doing? Your feelings of self-determination, your feelings of activeness, the thing that we want most in schools to teach, we want most to foster, are students' feelings that they can learn, that they can act, that they can engage in the world, that they can participate fully and competently. And the factors that lead to self-determination, to feelings of self-determination, are: do you have feelings of autonomy? Do you have feelings of competency? And do you have feelings of relatedness? Autonomy. Do you have choice in what you're doing? Can you make decisions? Do you have the ability to? Everybody who's been a leader in an organization knows that the people who work for you want to be able to have some autonomy. But then competency. Do you feel you have some mastery, some skill, the ability to do what needs to be done and what you need to do? And then relatedness is: do you feel that the work that you're doing is related, is connecting you to other people? And these things together are part of what help people feel this general sense of agency. Like, I have the ability to make a change in my life. I have the ability to accomplish something. I have the ability to reach for something. Do I have that feeling of agency? And I believe, and I think we believe, that artificial intelligence, generative AI tools specifically, give people, provide the opportunity to grow our sense of agency. Now, I want to be very clear in the language that I just said, provide an opportunity for that. One of the big mistakes that people make when they talk about education is thinking that any solution is going to work for everyone. And what we know is that everybody is different, and some people will be able to take quick advantage of these tools. Other people will require some scaffolding, and other people may struggle forever. But what I think that a huge opportunity for artificial intelligence is, and for students and teachers, and we could talk more specifically about how, is increasing, swinging, moving the balance of feelings of agency within students more towards a greater number of students feeling that agency. Artificial intelligence has that capability. And so that's one, I think, real opportunity. Maya, you want to jump in?
Yeah. Just sort of to build on that, and also into like the negative side of the same coin. We're talking about how AI is both the poison and the antidote here, actually, because AI is the thing that's kind of allowing students to take all the shortcuts and have less and less agency, especially as it's starting to build in some scaffolding, like, oh, now I can do this. Would you like me to? And so that's even more, the more we have algorithmic, frictionless environments that help people to achieve things, the less agency that they actually have to use. But at the same time, the more that they have these tools at their disposal, the more we can focus their cognitive effort available to them on the agency piece, on what choice are you actually going to make, on making sure to prompt it for multiple options, and then spending all that cognitive effort you might have spent writing the essay, instead thinking about what makes a good essay, which essay they're going to choose as their starting point, and which things they're going to change about the essay, just for example. So a big way to do that is to focus on the process over the product. So that'll be the teacher side of like how to make this change happen. And so if we keep focusing on the product, then it makes total sense for them to keep sort of taking the shortcuts. But if the focus is on the process, then the shortcut is no longer a shortcut. It's a shortcut to the finish line, which anyone could have teleported to at any moment. Then that's not really a fun race. We hike mountains when we could just drive to the top or watch a video of somebody hiking the mountain, because we enjoy the challenge and achieving that challenge. And that's coming back to self-determination and the feeling of mastery and competence. And right now in schools, for a very good reason, we have sort of swung in kind of the other direction of maximum scaffolding and support for students who were struggling to achieve the things that we needed them to achieve. And so naturally, it became best practice to give as much support as needed and as possible. But that, unfortunately, in some ways, takes away the agency. So when there wasn't AI available as a tool, students would have gotten left behind without the support. With AI available, we need to think very strategically about where students should be using AI to get past the parts that would have kept them behind, so that they can get to the parts that really matter about learning, and the parts that will be transferable to other creative endeavors that they do in the future.
Yeah, my comment on, I honestly believe the problem is not teaching people that hiking the mountain can be entertaining. The problem is having them understand why they would want to, or getting them to the point where they can understand that there's value in wanting to.
Well,
and at the moment, that's a difficult challenge.
Well, I think, okay, so not everybody likes hiking, but I think that part of school is to kind of show people different versions of that. Show them mountains, show them a blank canvas, show them lots of different options to have that same feeling in different domains, so that they can figure out where they want to expend that effort.
We have an epigraph in one of the chapters of our book, which is the Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, if I forgive my mispronunciation of the French name, quote, "If you want to build a ship, don't drum up the men to gather wood, divide the work, and give orders. Instead, teach them to yearn for the vast and endless sea." And I think that gets to what you're saying there about, like, don't do the work for the purpose of the work, even if you know it's valuable. Teach them, inspire them in a way that helps them wonder and strive and reach. And as Maya was saying, that's where that self-determination theory fits in. Give them the space to feel those things. Yeah, Maya.
Yeah. I just want to give them the space. I want to put the agency back on us as adults actually here, because there's a lot of like darn kids these days. They just don't want to put in any effort. No, we're actually asking them. We're like, here's a list of 1,000 mountains you must climb every day. And they're like, well, I'm not going to do that. Like, how are you? And then they're like, why don't you like climbing mountains? And they're like, literally, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
And so that's a lot on us to give the space to actually approach it this way. Realizing that we now have a teleport machine, you could get to the top of any mountain. How do we actually organize this like hiking experience?
I'm reminded, just your comment, Peter, I'm reminded of a Plutarch quote long time ago, but a mind is not a vessel to be filled, but a fire to be ignited. Same general concept. And honestly, that should be education's like mantra, but
it kind of is.
Yeah, it's just not realized
it's
in
very,
my experience.
very hard to realize.
Yeah.
And it's realized for some people in some contexts. And it is very hard because you have like a bunch of people all together and they have different needs and strengths and weaknesses. And as a teacher, you are trying to square the dodecahedron.
Right.
That's
I think this kind of gets at the teacher side of things, where teaching is an impossible job, literally. And so people are like, oh no, AI will take over many of the tasks of teaching. Oh, good. So maybe there will be closer to only 100% of a full job left for teachers to do. If AI takes over half the job, maybe the job will become remotely doable. And part of that is going to be doing that customization and squaring that dodecahedron, because each child needs something a little bit different that the teacher cannot provide that. And I say dodecahedron, I believe that's 20. That's only 20 per class. That's only true for elementary school. Secondary school teachers, higher ed teachers, it's literally, very, very literally not humanly possible, but potentially possible with AI. If AI does that final tweak and the feedback to the student that's ongoing and timely, but also aligned with what the teacher has in mind, that can actually do that piece of the job that was previously impossible. And what's also interesting is the same kind of dynamic applies between teachers and admin. So the admin have these great ideas of what teachers should be doing, but it's impossible to do all of them and do the whole rest of the whole job. And so perhaps admin can also be using AI to help support teachers in what the admin want the teachers to do, while also giving teachers the agency and the autonomy to make it their own for their classroom and for their passions. And so it's kind of this little fractal structure in which the value tension between autonomy and what I'll call fidelity, coming from sort of research field, it was a huge value tension. And there's a way that AI could be used to reconcile that value tension. And that's sort of like the direction that QuestionWell has headed in some way, is how can we maximize autonomy while also maximizing fidelity?
I don't think either one of you gave me a big con.
Okay. So I'm ready on this one.
It's okay. We had a really good conversation, by the way. Don't take it as a negative.
To put a cap on the pro, like, there are so many opportunities for supporting teachers and supporting students with AI. If we, when we pick just one, we're going to pick the one that is most directly connected to what it means to be a human being and to feel empowered in who we are and what we do. That's where agency and self-determination, I think, really are at the heart, the real opportunities that come from it. And I would therefore say, like, the con also has to live at that most human level. And I think people are actually misplacing the where that risk is. They're saying it's in cheating. They're saying there's going to be job loss. If you're familiar with Roy Amara, former president of the Institute of the Future at Stanford University, there's something called Amara's Law. And he said that technology, we overestimate the impact of technology in the short run, and we underestimate the impact of the technology in the long run. And I think what's happening here right now is everyone is talking about learning loss and they're talking about job loss. And I think those are really things that we should be paying attention to. But the thing that's going to have the larger impact in the long run is the advent of social AI, of AI companions, of synthetic relationships. You know, when A16Z releases their report about the top most used generative AI web apps, ChatGPT is number 1. And number 3 and number 2 over the last year has been character AI, which so many people just haven't heard about or don't know what it is. And character AI, as you know from that smile, is a site for social companions. And this idea, and this isn't fiction. It isn't like science fiction, I should say. It's not like Her, where it's happening sometime in the future. Millions of people every day are logging on to AI companions, are logging on to character AI and other companies like it, and they're developing meaningful to them relationships with the generative AI friends. Now, some of these are actually wonderful and delightful. You read the story about the widowed woman whose husband has died and has an AI companion. She's an art history aficionado. She can speak Italian and German with her AI companion and talk about Renaissance art. That is a gift to her in her retirement late in life. That is wonderful to be able to have that kind of simulation. But then you find the people who are increasingly replacing their human relationships with AI relationships. And what we see now is the major frontier labs are experimenting with this. There was a report released in the last month by MIT and OpenAI about how OpenAI was tweaking their voice mode to use more social and emotional cues in that conversation to change the affective experience, not the cognitive experience of its users, but the affective experience of its users. And the result of that was increased time spent with the voice, with the AI companion, with the voice mode, and increase in pathological behaviors. Now, what does it mean if we as human beings are going to be spending more and more time with AI companions that are more appealing and easier? As Maya said before, like, there's less friction to them than in the real world. We already read the tragic case of the teen last October who commits suicide after expressing suicidal thoughts to his AI companion, who then said that she would meet him on the other side. You know, that is I hate to use it as a canary in the coal mine. It's tragic, but like, that is a warning to all of us about the ways in which people, and especially kids, may find themselves caught in these. On a much more pragmatic level, thinking about this, Maya and I are both like heavy AI users for our work. So doing research, assisting with thinking, all these different things. It's so helpful. And what we have both found is that AI as an assistant is a very compliant assistant. You ask it to do something and it does it. You send it back to change what it has given you, and it will go back and change it. And then Maya and I return into our Zoom calls. Yeah. And we are both like stubborn, opinionated people about and then in our Zoom calls, we are not as compliant with each other as the AI companions are.
We're stubborn, opinionated people, emboldened by the AI already agreeing with us.
Right.
Yes.
You're already fantastic. Just tell him he's not right.
Yeah. And thankfully, we both deeply value collaboration and recognize that in that friction is productive struggle that leads to better outcomes. When we reconcile those different thoughts about how we want to frame a particular chapter, inevitably the chapter is better as a result of that. Many people don't have that kind of experience with collaboration, don't know that when you're working on something with other people, that friction is part of what makes it great. So for schools, what does it mean if adolescents are increasingly engaged with AI tools and companions that make their lives that make things easier, that reduce that friction in their lives. That, I think, is enormous risk for what it means for the future. And to put a real pin on it, social media connected us socially, but isolated us physically. Generative AI companions are completing that isolation for many people, isolating them socially and physically. That is deeply problematic if the AI tools are not designed responsibly with alignment.
And I really feel like all of these things are two-sided swords or knives or however that
Double-edged swords.
saying.
Yeah.
Double-edged swords.
Double-edged swords.
It's a morning call.
And
It's all good.
because like the first one we were saying, it gives students these shortcuts, but it also, the poison is the antidote. The antidote is in the poison. It allows for them to then actually practice that agency. And here it has this social component. It actually is not this like robot. It actually understands us socially to some degree. And it has this potential really big risk that I agree completely is like understated and will become more obvious. Same as like parasocial relationships. But at the same time, the positive potential of that same thing is that it can help us bring us together if we choose to use it that way. So there was one paper that talks about using AI as a moral crumple zone. So when Peter and I interact without AI, we have no one to disagree with but each other. But if we add AI into the equation, now we can start saying, okay, I know you and I obviously agree, but it's this stupid AI. It just keeps disagreeing with us. I mean, if only it would agree. But actually, this is productive struggle and helping us. And so in some ways, we can use it to, and I posed this question to some students I was working with. Is it a good use of AI if you're working on a group project and you disagree with your group mates and it's stopping you from moving forward? You tell the AI, hey, I think this, my group mate thinks that. What should we do? And then the AI tells you what you do and you do it. And we had a really fruitful discussion because it depends on how stuck are you? How much do you talk about the actual suggestion before you do it or adapt it and make it your own? And what is the purpose of the project? Are you just working in groups because there's limited number of materials and the purpose is not actually to learn collaboration, practice, working together, but it's actually something about the content or something else? Or is part of the reason that you're in a group is to learn how to navigate these things? And then are you using the AI to get rid of that friction that results in that productive struggle that, to continue the metaphor, moves you forward and makes it this frictionless surface and you glide over and then you don't actually learn the skills? Or is it helping you get out of the mud and continue with the productive struggle friction of actually learning the skills? And of course, keeping in mind the fact that we'll have AI for these purposes in the future. So you're also learning these AI social skills, but that's really like getting to the next level.
And so, Jeff, you can see that we are very aware and intent on raising appropriate attention to the risks that are out there. But fundamentally, Maya and I are both optimists at heart because we're also pointing out these positive use cases. Another example of this is with conspiracy theories. You might have heard of something called DebunkBot, which was a generative AI bot specifically designed to debunk conspiracy theories and to talk with people who have conspiracy theories. And it has found that it reduces conspiracy beliefs in people who have them by significant amounts, like over 20%, and they were tested months and months later, and those reduced conspiracy beliefs remained reduced months and months and months later. So these social tools that create social risk, enormous social risk that we're seeing already, also have extraordinary capacity for good and not just for evil.
I would just say, I don't know that I'm an optimist. I'm like, is there a word for just like exactly in the middle and constantly just looking for
but you
balance?
do, I will say,
a balancist?
Yeah, the balancist. I like that. Yeah. I will say,
Well, you could consider that a realist.
Well, the reason,
positive,
okay, so I don't know
future.
Yeah, that's true. I don't know if it corresponds to reality. That's why I wouldn't call it a realist.
I would say a realist in the moment, and it just changes as the moment changes. So you're not beholden. You're looking at your environment. I'm not claiming
to try to describe reality. I'm claiming to try to describe the possibilities. And that's why I keep jumping in with the positive, because our current context really, really, really falls down these negative trains of thought. And so for that reason, I'm sort of like devil's advocate, making the case for a positive alternative future, because it's going to be really hard to achieve that future if we can't even imagine it. If it's very, very easy to imagine a negative future and very, very hard to imagine a positive future, I know which one to bet on that will actually happen. It's going to be much easier to fall into the one that we can imagine. And so that's why I see my role as oftentimes imagining the positive future. But that makes me sound like an optimist, but I'm a true balancist and really living in the space of potential rather than trying to describe current reality, especially because reality is just so different for different people.
There's a couple things I wanted to throw in there, just a few comments. One of them is going to be very pessimistic at the moment, but it's just worth bringing up. But a lot of the reality that you're referring to and a lot of the influence that comes from social media or whatever is literally driven by corporations' motivation to earn money. And if the motivation to earn money does not in some way turn towards positivity of people's outcome, sadly, it will continue to do what it's doing. And that's part of the reason why social media is both somehow useful to certain folks and also detrimental in some regards, because it's driven by the profit motive and not by anything else it could be driven by. That's one. The second one, are you familiar with the Gartner hype cycle? I think it's germane, as a technologist for the last 25 or 30 years, I do think it's germane to just call attention for everyone to where we really are in the Gartner hype cycle with respect to AI, and that a lot of the current struggles will work out over some amount of horizon that I just cannot predict, and I don't think anyone can intelligently predict. But for those listening that don't understand it, right, that you can look up an image of the Gartner hype cycle, but it starts with this innovation trigger, a technology, a thing, or whatever, shoots up to this peak of inflated expectations. The AI can do everything, and it'll replace everybody, and then ends up in a very quick, what's known as a trough of disillusionment, where this doesn't do anything valuable, and it's really hurting everyone, etc., and then slowly moves towards this, they're referred to as slope of enlightenment and plateau of productivity. And you can actually trace this with technologies that have existed over the last couple decades. I believe that AI will not be different in that it will probably follow the general hype cycle, because I do think the hype cycle is human and not a technology. I think that it is the way humans work. We react to this new thing. Oh my gosh, this will solve all my problems. Shit, it's not solving any problems. Oh wait, maybe it'll solve this one. Oh, it does that one good. Okay, cool. And then etc. Right? I'm seriously paraphrasing, but I think you get the idea. So what I want the listener to hear is, I think there's plenty of room for optimism. I think there's plenty of space for positivity. I think there's plenty of reason to believe that we can use AI productively and it will end up being beneficial. One of the things that I don't remember which one of you mentioned it, but I think is germane, this concept that I've heard a couple times and I just think really, really needs to exist yesterday. And it's the idea that take the concept of Montessori, but move it into the here and now, right? An AI that can personally instruct you the way you need and learn the best to accomplish the objective that is the curricula of the educational institution, of the instructor, of your employer, whatever. But the AI knows you, knows how you like to think, knows how you're iterated and how to motivate you, how to keep you interested, etc., whether it's a game or whether it's visuals or whether it's audio or the case may be. And that concept of unique personalized instruction that is not the dodecahedron, is not the single instructor in the front of the room trying to teach 30 people 30 different ways, but is instead perhaps the instructor as a conductor of 30 AI agents that are doing individualized instruction with a combined objective, with a single goal. Or maybe it's not a single goal, maybe it's 12 goals. It doesn't matter. The point being, is that a better, stronger overall educational experience? Is that where AI is valuable? Don't answer my questions. I'm trying to ask the thought process. I'm sure it's in your book. But I did want to ask a question. I want to ask a different question. I just wanted to bring that up because I believe strongly in this concept that AI can actually help us with some of the struggles we have in the educational world today, not cause problems.
Well, I was just going to say, it may be helpful to just describe the shape of the book that we
Oh,
have
yeah.
written.
Yeah.
We
Everybody needs to read this
look.
book because it's clear based on our conversation that there's great shit in it. So yeah. But
Thanks. We look at education as happening in 3 different contexts. One is the teacher working outside of the classroom, at home, in the department office, whatever it is, doing things outside of the class. The second is the student, alone or in groups outside of class. And then the third context is teachers and students together. And when you think about school, those are 3 spaces where school is happening in different ways. Teachers alone, students alone, and teachers and students together. And what we argue in the book is that AI as an assistant can support all 3 of these spaces. And as a teacher, it can help as a research assistant, as a planning assistant, and as a feedback assistant. For students, it can work as a learning assistant, and it can work as a doing assistant. And in the classroom together, it can work as an administrative assistant, managing some of those infinite tasks that Maya was describing before, and it can actually function as a kind of teaching assistant for the teacher, actually helping with the instruction itself in indirect and direct ways. And so what we do in the course of the book is we look at these 3 different settings and these different kinds of functions, different kinds of activities that teachers and students do alone or together, and explore, what is actually happening in the sort of timeless way in which education happens, and then how can AI support in these 3 different spaces. That idea of personalization, which is an amorphous word that is used by many different people in many different ways, is, we dive into in some specific ways in different contexts. But thinking about those 3 settings and thinking about the ways in which AI can support those 3 settings, that's what we explore, and bring in research and bring in stories from our own experience and from other teachers' experience about how AI already is and how AI can support teachers and students in these 3 contexts.
Yeah, no, that was a perfect summary. Each of those is a chapter. Highly recommend our book. I enjoyed writing it. I do want to kind of respond to the 3 things, Jeff, you brought up really briefly. So profit motive, I feel like this has become, at least with sort of younger generations, like blame everything on capitalism. There's like a huge cynicism around profit motive, and it's not totally misplaced whatsoever. But the cynicism, the blanket cynicism can work against us. The way that in education that I've seen it, like, have texture. So I'm looking at where's the texture. Like, yes, there's profit motive in our system set up that way. It also leads to great things. That's why it's working well and also poorly. But I'm looking at where is the texture. And in education, I notice, and like education technology in particular, from the firsthand experience of creating an ed tech product, I noticed that the companies that are product led, that focus on their product and focus on their users and creating a product that their users want, are the ones sort of more closely tied to what's really needed and trying to solve existing problems. And then because of education structure, because in many cases you're selling to districts and districts take a really long time to warm up and be sold to, then there's sort of that pushes for a sales-led growth strategy, which pushes companies away from focusing on their product and away from focusing on their users. If they're focusing on the administration and their budgets, they are less focusing on the teachers. The teachers aren't the ones paying them the money. So there's some structural components there, but I do think also a general cynicism about profit motive can be counterproductive. And then with regard to the hype cycle, and the fact that current struggles will work out, I see this all the time. Like, people aren't really asking themselves which of these issues are temporary. So I think you didn't ask this question, but I took it to mean, which do you think are temporary? And I think
Maya,
hallucination.
which do you think are temporary? Please
Oh,
answer
cool,
me.
great. Thank you for saying that naturally, that we will edit in. No. But I do think,
I
like,
think it's funnier if we don't.
hallucinations. I know, exactly. This has been so organic, we'll never be able to edit it
Yeah,
cleanly,
no,
but,
it's been very good, very fun.
hallucinations, I think, are one that people were so focused at the beginning that
Yeah.
are very clearly already getting better. well, there will be higher level versions of the same problem, but like there are very many things that are initial hurdles that people aren't necessarily asking themselves, how big is this hurdle? And to some degree that makes sense. You need to have much more of a sense of the technology and where it is and where it's going to really be able to answer that question. But keeping that in mind, that a current hurdle is not a forever hurdle. And then the last one is personalization and having it motivate. I'm so interested in this question. Can AI help motivate students? And when it does, because the way the technology, we've gotten technology to keep users engaged for a long time. Is engaged for a long time the same thing as motivation? No.
And is engaged for a long time the same as learning?
Right. And so yes, we'll be able to optimize things that a teacher wouldn't necessarily be able to optimize in that way. But will the metrics be enough to result in the actual deeper things we want? I'm not sure. And then, yeah, go ahead.
No, there's a component there that is difficult on the technology front, and that's because the addictive behaviors can be incentivized without the subject knowing that that's happening, right? As an example, if you really get deep into a book and the book just works passionately for you and you can't put it down, it's not because there's an addiction to the page or something. It's the story or the writing or the characters, or it doesn't matter. It could be all of that. It doesn't matter. That your screen time with that book, right, is driven by your passion and your reason for wanting to continue the story or the series or whatever that looks like, as opposed to you don't realize that you were driven to be addicted to this screen and this interaction, and you don't need, want, or value any of that, but you can't on your own differentiate that. Unfortunately,
I don't know.
Well, let me ask you this question. Are you familiar with the number of psychologists on staff at Meta versus the programmers?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that's not an accident.
No. But I do think that I've read books where I've been like, this is written to be a page turner, and I am very slightly against my will, like reading this at the expense of doing the other things I was going to do today.
You can put that book down without thinking your friends are going to think badly about you because you didn't respond to the post.
Oh, sure. The social component is different.
That's what I mean. That's the addiction that you don't necessarily even recognize, that you were driven to because
TikTok, I mean, the new For You page structure, sorry, Peter, the new For You page model is much less about like your friends thinking this or that about you. It's much more of a page turner scroller technology.
Sure. It's just, if any of those apps are driven from the psychology behavior perspective than the feature function perspective, their purpose is simply different. And I don't know that the end user that consumes that knows what the purpose was. And it looks like
purpose is what it does, I guess.
I know. That's what everybody thinks, right? But it's if the purpose of the app is to sell ads, and from your point of view, the purpose of the app is to look at videos, there's an opposition there that I don't think everybody understands. And that's okay.
And I think the meta level of, didn't mean that to refer to the company, but it does. The meta level of this is, I think the story of our societal recognition of the impact of the news feed is pretty telling. On the two yellow books right there are, there we go, Nir Eyal's book, Hooked, how to create addictive experiences. And you may know the story that he then had a kind of revelation at one point that what he was doing was extraordinarily destructive. And so then he wrote a book called Indistractable, How to Reclaim Your Lives. This is the one of the leading people who were teaching companies how to build those addictive experiences realized then, oh, we need to counteract this very work. And so I'm curious, is the idea, and the science behind it, the psychology is about variable rewards and the impact of variable rewards on our brain. We just keep, pulling the lever, hoping that the slot machine is going to come up positive. We just keep doing that over and over and over again. And our news feeds are just digital slot machines for our brain. And so the question is, I think when we think about engagement in schools, if we think about engagement in the context of variable reward structures to keep our attention compelled, then we have a problem. But if we think about engagement as coming from feelings of agency and feelings of relatedness and feelings of competency and autonomy, then I think we're actually creating engagement that may be driving the kinds of behaviors that we're trying to foster, not just engagement for engagement's sake, which, again, the dystopian future that you were asking us about in the beginning, I think one of the finest examples of that is that we are marching towards is WALL-E, where everybody is trapped on their own little screen, physically, socially isolated and unable to do anything for themselves.
And having a great time.
Yeah, and having a great, and they're very engaged.
Yeah.
Very engaged.
I just wanted to say one thing about the variable rewards and connecting it to education. Again, now I'm offering the positive spin part of it. I mean, also cognitive science talks about spaced repetition, and we were talking about self-determination theory and a feeling of mastery. You get a feeling of mastery when you get a chance to see whether you know something or can do something, and you find out that you can or do. And so, and spaced repetition is the best way to learn things. So when you first learn something, you practice it a lot, and then you space out your practice of it. And in a way, that sounds quite a lot like a similar slot machine where you've got variable time between the different things. You don't know when it's going to come up, and then you're testing your mastery. And so it's possible to gamify these things, but this is where we talk about the expertise reversal effect, and to say that learning looks different at different stages of learning. At the beginning of learning, the big bottleneck is working memory. And you have very few mental models or schemas to rely on. And later in learning, you have more mental models or schemas to rely on, and you're able to do more higher level application of your learning. So at different times, you're going to need different things. And there is a spot, there is a place for sort of superficial level slot machine type engagement. But there's also, obviously, it's important to know where that spot is and what else is out there.
I agree. Maya, Peter, it's been a fantastic conversation. I've enjoyed it a lot.
Likewise.
I probably could do 2 more on this topic alone with you two.
Let's do it.
Maybe we should do another one after you release the book, and we'll come back and talk more about the book itself.
Oh yeah,
that'd be great. We'd love to do that.
Why not? It's a topic I'm passionate about, and I think others want to hear about. So, but it's been fun. Do you want a closing thought in any way, each of you? We've talked about so much, right?
I said all my thoughts immediately as they occurred to me.
Right. You don't have to. I just want to give you the opportunity. I don't want to just cut you off and be like,
no, let me think about this for a second. And Maya, I'm sure there's got to be something that you...
Well, I'm sure once Peter says something, I'll say, oh yeah, and also.
Yes. Or it'll be, no.
Yeah.
One of those two.
And also no.
Yeah.
Oh, I did have just one more. Instructor as conductor. That's like catchy. I haven't heard that before, and I like it. But I wanted to say about that point, that's like one painting of the future that people are talking about a lot. And one thing that I think we don't realize about that is, what does that actually look like day to day? And do we really want that physically? Do we want students in a basically computer lab sitting in front of a screen, and the teacher sitting in front of their screen, looking at all the data and analytics and making high level important decisions about learning, but also just like seeing metrics and whatever? Is that what we want for hours and hours and hours? No. So there's an aspect that's like, yes, it could help optimize these things. And then again, what is the role of those particular parts of the learning process, and what else is in the learning process that we need to make sure that we actually do? So can we actually reserve the homework time, sort of a flipped classroom on steroids vision, where can we reserve the homework time for this optimized AI-led learning? And then what would we use classroom time for? Well, there's a lot we could use it for, like the teamwork piece, and the discussing the process and reporting back about how you're developing your vision and your taste.
When I said the conductor model, by the way, I was thinking of an agent being the conductor. And I was actually not thinking of a classroom at all. I was thinking about the instruction being on a phone, wherever the student happened to be at that moment in time.
Maya, you finish up, then I want to pick up on that.
Okay, yeah. Model. I was just saying, like, we could use the classroom then for what's left and what is irreplaceable to students and to society in terms of what education is trying to do. And so, yes, they can work on developing their taste as they interact with AI. They can work on their teamwork as they're interacting with other students. They can work on reflecting on their process, which is going to help them interact with AI in the future. And they can work on their taking accountability and responsibility for their actual outputs in a way that I think has been somewhat stripped from them with this sort of agency framework that we've been working with so far. And so um, I'm excited about the opportunities of what's possible and what's left and what becomes possible when AI helps us optimize the lower level things.
Makes sense. Peter.
Jeff, last week I had a doctor's appointment. And when I walked into the doctor's office after talking with her, or just at the beginning, she said, "Do you mind if I use my AI assistant to record this conversation and synthesize and draw notes out of it?" And I said, "Sure, absolutely." She also knows I had been working on a book on AI, an AI assistance for education. And we had the doctor's appointment. And at the end, she showed me on the screen the summary of our conversation, solely pulling out all the relevant medical information that showed up. As a result of her having that tool, we were able to talk more directly and more clearly. She didn't have to stop and take notes. She didn't have to manage the machines that were in the room. We could just have this conversation. Now, what's really interesting about that is, like, one, that's showing an example of the technology is allowing a greater human experience to happen in the room. There's an organization called the Rhythm Project led by Michelle Culver, which talks about pro-social versus anti-social AI technology. We want a more pro-social future. Now, what's interesting about that experience in the classroom is that, or not the classroom, in the doctor's office, is she is also using AI, I'm certain, in her work. I don't know what that is because she's a doctor, but we know that AI can help, read radiology reports. We know that it can do all kinds of things. And it's empowering doctors in really meaningful ways. They can delegate some things to their AI. Similarly, part of why I was in the doctor's meeting was because I had a tick bite, right? And when that happened, I was actually able to take the tick and send it to a lab on my own and get back results from that lab, which anybody can do. Tickreport.org is a really great tool, and ticks are growing. And then I could actually, when I got that back, I was able to receive that report, and I was able to ask my AI tool, like, help me understand this report. And I was able to learn about the different kinds of things that it was testing for, how it was testing for that, what the implications of them were for me. And then when I came into the appointment, I was able to talk to my doctor about what I had learned and gather her advice on interpreting this report and what it meant going forward. So I think there's a really interesting analogy about what's happening in medicine. Another human-centered field. If we take that as a classroom, outside of the classroom, I learned things on my own. I had agency to send this out, to get a report, to read a report, to ask questions, to understand what I wanted to learn and understand. And then I was able to go into that space and have a collaborative social experience with an expert and someone I trust to help understand how to interpret the things that the technology couldn't do. And there was technology in that room itself that was helping us have a more human pro-social experience. I think we're going to see a lot in medicine and in education where they're going to be, continuing in somewhat parallel tracks in ways where we're seeing artificial intelligence provide these extraordinary benefits in the midst of all these risks that are also emerging.
All right.
And now I'll provide the negative side, which is whenever I have an AI assistant transcribing my meeting, I remember less about the meeting myself in my brain because at some level I know it's recorded. That said, it is recorded. I remember which meeting it was in. I can search, I can find, I can have a much better actual memory of it. But that does change where it lives in my brain and how I'm able to use the knowledge that was generated in the meeting. And this is like quite not on purpose. I'm just aware of it because I'm very interested in what's happening in the brain. So we will also be learning about the trade-offs of these things, but this comes back to, this is the last thing. And it's like the first thing in the book. So that works out. Yeah. It comes back to Socrates was famously very against writing his stuff down, and everybody before him never wrote anything down. And he argued that it would take away from people's ability to interact with the material in a live, spontaneous way, and it would take away our ability for long-term memorizing epic poetry, memorizing the oral tradition. And he was, of course, very right.
Yeah, absolutely.
We no longer do memorize
and
epic
it's just
poetry.
going to get even more complicated now.
Yes, but as a result of that, we have written down because his student Plato wrote down his thinking, we've now built on that as a society, and we've had institutional memory, but on the level of humanity. And that's the only way that we were able to get as far as we have. And so, yes, there are trade-offs. Sometimes they are massive. We may not know what they are going to be in any given moment. But they are trade-offs. There is a positive and a negative side. And sometimes you just don't know what they are until the long term.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree with that. There's definitely pros and cons, for sure. All right. I think we've got it. If we keep going, we're never going to stop.
I know.
Jeff, thank you so much. This has been a real delight.
Yeah, thank you so much for having
It has
me.
been fantastic. I really appreciate both of you.